guys, it's your girl Kizzy Rock, and yes, Kizzy Rock is my birth given name. Happy Saturday afternoon. Want to say hey to all my subscribers, new as well as season. I got a word for you. Tap in. Happy Saturday, guys. So, guys, to those of you who are tapped in, you're tapped in and you're disciplined and you're obedient. God is giving out insights and revelation like never before. Seriously. A lot of you, you're literally, if you're not, like if the door hasn't been open yet for you, some of you it has from reading your emails, but a lot of you are really at the door. Like seriously, like you're there. The issue is some of you are not being flexible enough to remove your hands off of what God is telling you. Now, God could have told you it directly, or he may be drying it up. He's drying it up, but you're still trying to hold on to it for different reasons. Maybe it's the fear of the unknown, or maybe you feel like the thing he's asking you to let go of, you may feel like that's what's going to supply maybe financial means for you, but God is kind of drying it up and telling you to take your hands off of it. So it's like you're still holding on to certain things. This can look like certain habits. Whatever that God has been convicting you about, asking you to remove. This can be people, places, and things. Asking you to remove and to take your hands off of certain things. And if he's removing people, stop trying to get it back. This can even look like an ex who constantly is reaching out to you, and it can go a little something like this. Can we just have one last conversation, right? That type of thing. But God had been clear and told you to either block the number, don't respond, change the number, or but then there's something in you. There's this something of, it could be that people pleasing seed, because you don't like to hurt people's feelings or whatever, even though these people they got themselves in the very place that they're in, right? They got themselves cut off, but now it's like they're trying to come back, right? These are distractions. Whatever God is convicting you of, regardless if you want to do it, regardless if it's something that you're emotionally tied to, regardless if it's the fear of the unknown and he's asking you to release something, but you don't know what's going to come next, and you're too dependent on this thing, you are going to block your own blessing. The door will not open. Also, there's a slight shift, not something too major. This is not for everybody. So whatever God has said is right. Whatever God has said to you years ago, some of you maybe months, some of you years, some even decades. Whatever God has said to you, God may have only given you a seed of an idea with that thing. He may have only given you a glimpse of something. He may have even given you a certain number, a certain song, a certain something that didn't make any sense. I mean, he just gave it to you. But now, after all this time have passed, that thing is coming full force. I've heard some people say that numbers are, I guess, like new age or whatever. And I don't I go by what I feel in my spirit, right? I think wise counsel is important, but I feel like there are certain things that God gives certain people, and it sits so well in your spirit that you don't even question if it's like new age or such and such. So for me, there are certain ways God operates with numbers, and it's definitely not anything new age or demonic. It's something that he may give you a number and then there's a certain scripture that pops up, or he might lead you to a scripture with that number. And then you start seeing that number everywhere, and then he may convict you and say, hey, go read such and such scripture that's related to that number. But anyway, if it's a number for you, at some point years ago, you saw that number and it was something that highlighted that number. And at the beginning, you saw it over and over and it just didn't make sense. Like, why do I keep seeing this number? And then over time, it just went silent. You wasn't really seeing it like that. But right now, that number is back chasing you down. God is letting you know that the promise, that whatever he put into your spirit, he may have not even been clear and told you how he's going to bless you or anything. For some of you, he did. But that thing is coming back to you because it's time. You got to be so tapped in right now. I can't stress enough how tapped in you have to be. You got to be to a posture. If I could physically paint a picture, you would have to be butt naked, sitting in a forest, somewhere in the countryside where the nearest neighbor or the nearest store is 30 miles away. You have no technology, no phone, no nothing. They're being still all along. That's just a picture. That's just a picture of what I feel about how tapped in you gotta be. Your distractions have to be at zero for what God is doing in some, all caps, some people's lives. So there's a slight shift, meaning, yes, what God has said is. But there's a slight shift now where God is going to start downloading some things to you, and it goes a little something like this. Okay. The promise is, but now, here's what I need you to do when the door opens. You were fantasizing about this fairy tale of a something, right? Which it is. I promised you it, so it is. But now I'm going to give you more insight because the door is about to open. When you get there, I don't care about money. I don't care about name. I don't care about influence. I don't care about affluence. I'm going to give you strict details. You are to tell this person, God says it's time for you to get right. God says enough with the foolishness. God said, whatever he has downloaded to you in your wilderness, it's time to pay attention. God is saying, he's done convicted you 1,000 times and you keep making your head hard. And this may be your last warning, so you may want to listen. That type of thing. Meaning, initially, the promise looked so big, all smoke and mirrors. The promise looked so big and so grand that it had you fearful. That it had you feeling like you weren't enough. In fact of the matter is, you're child, this thing is deep. You're the chosen one. The reason why you felt all these different, that was the enemy. That was all the enemy. Because if you ever really know who you were and what you carry, if you ever really saw yourself the way God saw you, now you know. Throughout the wilderness, you know. God showed you everything. God taught you everything. God gave you the fire. God gave you insights. God showing you how. Look around you. The people that the world once had on a pedestal is like lost, is like that glimmer of what quote unquote the celebrity life or whatever looks like. That glimmer is gone. They're like regular people. I mean, they have always been, but when most people were blind and kind of just saw it as the, the glitz and the glamour and all this other stuff. Well, now look around you. Most of these people are lost. Most of these people will never even return to their job because Hollywood will never be what it was. So what God is calling a lot of us to do is, some of you are called to like higher levels to reach higher people, because a lot of you will be called to larger rooms, because remember, these people already have the platform. But what's happening, a lot of these people are struggling, right? They're committing suicide. They're on drugs and excessive amounts of alcohol, etc., etc. It's because they're struggling too, just like your average person, because they're your average person. But with a lot of them, they don't even realize that what's going on is that God is drawing out the lane of movies and writers and this and all that stuff, right? God is drawing that stuff up is because he's trying to transition them over to purpose. So wherever God is sending you, you got to be bold, because the enemy wants you to think that certain people like you should maybe be, intimidated by or whatever. It was all a lie. It was smoke and mirrors. One of you guys said smoke and mirrors, and I can't stop saying it now. It was all smoke and mirrors. But here is where a lot of people is going to miss it. A lot of people still haven't been disciplined enough to allow God to build them in a certain kind of way. They haven't been disciplined enough to really hear what God is saying and what God needs when he opens the door. And because of their lack of discipline or the lack of obedience, they don't have the correct message. They don't have the insight of what God needs you to do when the door opens to wherever you're going. You don't have the correct insight, because it's deeper than what you first heard 10 years ago. So there's a shift. And that's why a lot of the things are drying up. The things that you used to have so much passion for, that was a hobby, and maybe something that was making you money as like a side gig. It's not even moving, and you're trying to beat your wheels down to make it happen. Beat your wheels down. I don't even know what. You're trying to like, you can't understand. Like, I don't understand because God gave me this vision. God, you gave me this vision 2 years ago, and 2 years ago it was very successful. But why would God give me something and it's no longer fruitful? Because it's just not fruitful right now. It may be in 3 months, right? It may pick back up. But he's drawing things up because he needs people spiritually tapped in right now more than ever, so you can get the directions for your assignment. I'm telling you guys, it came clear as day. The time is now. Listen, I don't think some people really know how pressing the time is, right? Most of us have heard all of our lives, we're in the last days. We're in the last days. I remember hearing that as probably a 3 or 4 year old child, right? We're in the last days. We're in the last days. And we've heard it so much that it's cliche. But you can't deny that there's something in the spiritual realm where you didn't feel when you would hear your grannies and maybe your parents talking about it, right? You heard it. But now you feel it in the spiritual realm. Now, who knows? We don't know, right? But whatever God has handpicked you for, you got to get on your grind. Now, mind you, you already know, I'm not this religious. I'm not, that's just not who I am. I love God. God uses me very non-traditionally. My heart is pure. My spirit is pure. But I'm not called to church. church folks would throw me to hell the minute I walk in there talking about I'm a pastor's wife. Lord, forgive me. I'm trying to make a point because many of you are called to church. In fact, speaking of church, listen. Let me leave that alone. For some things have changed, right? Since what, 2019? Things have changed and they're going to continue to change. I said on the community post, no, I'm in a recording, but I said in the comment section, there are going to be major people of influence who are going to be exposed for different things. I mean, just exposed, right? Where you're going to see that they're really not living the life that they're preaching about, if you will. And it's going to be on a large scale, meaning these are influential people, but it's going to be seen by the masses. But things are going to continue to have the church, not all churches, of course, crumble. Because some of these people have had people so blind, under a spell type of thing, I guess, if you will. And because God is moving swiftly on attempting to get people to open their eyes of what's really going on in these last days and how close we are, that he has to allow people to get exposed because some of these people got so many individuals under their whatever they got going on. You're going to see that happen. That came to me clear as day in a dream. Major people, and it's not even pastors. This can look like people even from Hollywood. Right? R. Kelly was just the start. Major things are going to get exposed. Because too many people, upper level people, or whatever you want to call them, they got too much of a grip on the masses. And God is attempting to wake up the masses. So something has to happen. So if you're called to church, please get your butt to church. But those of you who are not called to church, and I mean, anything can shift, right? Anything can shift. If you're not called to church, however God uses you. For some of you, God use you as servers. Some of you, you're reaching people on social media, right? Just speaking about God in general. Everything doesn't have to be churchy, holy, religious. Certain things are just introducing people to God and how God have worked in your life, right? Because each person has a call to reach a certain type of audience. I've had people who email me and say, the reason why I listen to you is because you're not churchy, holy, right? You love God, but you're very well aware that God uses you, but just not in your traditional churchy, holy way. Wow. I was raised, not me, is what people are saying. They were raised to think that God can only use you in the pulpit. And so they struggle with ever realizing that God can use them in different ways. God have a ton of ways to use you. He needs to use you in different ways because everybody can't relate to. Do you know how many people are scorned from church? Do you know how many people are scorned from church? Go on YouTube. Somebody sent me the link last night for the first time I ever saw it. It blew my mind. I forgot the name of the channel, but it's about a guy who exposes like pastors who have either, oh my goodness, child, it's a whole zoo. But anyway, God, some people are scorned from church. So you're not going to be able to receive anything from a churchy, holy person. Because you're already, so God have a certain group for you to reach. You got to know how God uses you. Some of you, you're going to be kingdom financiers. I already know that's one way God is going to be using me, right? Because things are going to get so bad that you're going to have pastors who are very, very firm on their stance, and they're going to try to be canceled. They're going to be canceled, or they're going to try to cancel them because, and God is going to have some of you in place to back them financially. So it's almost like that threat of you can't say this, or you can't speak about homosexuality, or you can't speak about what do you call when somebody have more than one wife or whatever. You can't speak against this. If you do, we're going to cancel you. Well, God is going to have some of you guys in place to say, hey, you cancel him, we got him. You cancel her, we got him. Right? So everything is not about you being in the church. It's just very, very important to understand how God needs to use you. You can't get that information until you get disciplined enough, until you become obedient enough to remove the things that God is removing, even when you don't understand, getting still enough so you can really hear what God is saying, pressing spiritually, let that be reading your word, let it be nature, however you hear from God, press in spiritually, because God is giving out insights like no other time. He needs, all cap, he needs you to get it. I mean, needs. He needs, all cap, he needs you to get it. So why would he be holding back anything? He's just holding certain things back because you're not in the posture or position to really hear what he's doing in your life. People are so wrapped around on the surface level stuff about marriage and all this fairy tale stuff. And now, honey, we in the last days. You, child, it's time to get your souls right. And again, that doesn't mean churchy, holy, right? It's time to get your souls right, because it's about to get real. Like, real, seriously. Those of you who are tapped in, you know what time it is. You feel what time it is. God have shown you what time it is. So you got work to do. Whatever that work is, however he needs to use you, you got work to do, boo, because you ain't that cute. It's your girl. Kizzy Rock.